God,
what are the Christ teachings that Trump fights for, my friend?
Then it is the case.
What are the gospel teachings your movement fights for? Your movement uses Christ as a prop, and you legislate against his commands.
Okay, so right out the gate, John Fugelsang is not messing around. He just flat out asks, what gospel teachings does Trump actually fight for? And honestly, that's the question. That's the one nobody on that side ever wants to answer directly. Because when you actually sit with it, I mean really sit with it, the answer's kind of embarrassing. This debate got heated fast. Let's keep going.
Right. But Trump has gone out there on the attack, as he often does, and said, this is an attack on Christians. What do you feel?
Well, I mean, Trump is just following the trends. We remember what happened with Charlie Kirk when progressives tried to paint him as some right-wing graper. Turns out that that was all complete and total lies. They were doing damage control. They tried to paint him out to be a right-winger, clear up until it became irrefutable that he was not anymore. And then they just changed the narrative again. So Trump is just following the trends. It is the case that Christians are persecuted in the United States, have been for a long time. And they're going to continue to be. That's kind of our cross to bear. We were told that that was going to be the case, in fact. That's part of what being a Christian is. As to Trump following the trends and making the assumption, do I kind of agree that you should have caution on these things? I do, but I can completely understand why it would be that he would have that reaction.
John Fugelsang, Benny Johnson posted about this attack on the church in Michigan. If a mosque was shut up every month, it would be a crisis for Muslims. If a synagogue was shut up every month, it would be a crisis for Jews. If a temple was shut up every month, it would be a crisis for Hindus. Christians, this is happening to us. Christianity is under attack. It's time to get serious about it. What's your response to that?
I keep hoping that one of these preventable attacks will inspire our Christian friends on the right to want to make it a little bit harder for unstable white men to easily get weapons that are designed to kill lots of people really fast. I really hoped after the awful murder of Mr. Kirk that some of our friends on the right would agree that maybe it's far too easy for unstable 20-something males to get their hands on hardware and pop off and murder people at a political rally.
He was using an antique rifle, dude. He was using, he was using an antique rifle.
I know.
An antique bolt.
It was unsecured.
Legislation?
I didn't interrupt you once, my friend. I didn't interrupt you one time.
What legislation do you think would have even been passed that would have prevented
if his grandfather had been obliged to keep, if his grandfather had been legally obliged to keep his gun secured at home, that shooting wouldn't have happened, and the Sandy Hook shooting would not have happened.
You can't even demonstrate that's true. For all you know, the kid has the safe code.
You're not letting me finish, and you've interrupted me twice now. Piers, the deal is right-wing Christianity in America has been suckered, and you're really going to... I'm going to answer Piers's question, my friend. I didn't interrupt you. Right-wing Christianity in America has been suckered for a very long time into aligning with power and authority instead of challenging it as Christ did. Donald Trump didn't get the love of evangelicals by promising to do a damn thing Jesus commanded of us. Right-wing Christianity does not fight for the things Jesus commanded and taught us to do. Right-wing Christianity fights for conservative Christian power over every level of society. They do not fight to welcome the stranger, as Christ commands in Matthew 25 and as God commands throughout the Old Testament. They do not fight for individuals and nations to care for the sick and the poor, as commanded by Christ in the judgment of nations. They fight for right-wing conservative Christian power, and America is suffering from a gun plague where children are now killed by guns more than disease, more than they are killed by car accidents. And I keep praying this is exactly the sort of situation where a religion based on love and empathy will come to our rescue. And yet, our conservative Christian friends are locked in this mindset that somehow personal freedoms matter more than the lives of Americans.
Honestly, Fugelsang is just right here. He's right. When you've got kids dying from guns more than car accidents, that's a real stat, by the way. And the response is just, don't touch my rights. It's exhausting. It's the same script every time. And then you have Andrew Wilson sitting there saying Christians are being persecuted? Come on, you're the majority, like 60-something% of the country. That isn't persecution. That's just a way to dodge a conversation about safety by pretending your faith is under fire. It's a deflection. Fugelsang really hit on something big when he talked about how this version of Christianity has been, well, suckered. It's become about power, keeping power, holding it over people instead of doing the actual hard work Jesus talked about. You know, welcoming the stranger, caring for the poor. Instead, it's all about ideology. It's It's like if any other product was killing kids at this rate, we'd pull it off the shelves in a heartbeat. But because it's guns, we just stall and talk in circles. It's not principled. It's just choosing a political side over people's lives. It's frustrating to watch.
Well, not really. So the idea of Christian nationalism is just that Christians remain the culturally dominant force in the United States. That's it. That's the entire proposition. Everything else is an addition. So the gentleman over here, for instance, a quick question for you. Is Jesus Christ God?
I believe so, but I don't believe in imposing my opinions on others.
Okay, gotcha. So Jesus Christ is God. So all the religions are false?
No, I don't believe that at all. I believe in my house there are many mansions, and I believe God has many ways of the truth. I don't think I'm better than anyone because Christ's movement is about humility. Christ's movement is not about public domination and power.
I just want to make sure I got this right. Are all other religions false?
I don't believe that at all, no. And I don't believe right-wing Christianity is true either.
Is Islam
right-wing Christianity does not...
Answer my question, dude.
MAGA
is Islam
does
true?
not fight for the teachings of Christ.
Is Islam true? Why? Is Islam true?
Islam believes in the same God as Christians. Do you believe we should welcome the stranger as God and Christ command, or do you believe in Donald Trump?
Wait, they believe Jesus Christ is God?
It's not my religion. They believe Christ is a prophet.
So then it's
the Virgin
false.
Mary is mentioned more in the Holy Quran than she's mentioned in the Bible.
I'm going to walk you through the logic here. If Jesus Christ is God,
what are the Christ teachings that Trump fights for, my friend?
Then it is the case.
What are the gospel teachings your movement fights for? Your movement uses Christ as a prop, and you legislate against his commands.
Stop filibustering.
Dude, you
so I can
interrupted
answer
me.
your question. So I was in the middle of it. I asked you a single question and was getting to the follow-up, and you go on these long diatribes.
You asked
Calm down, listen to what I'm saying.
You asked two questions, my friend.
Logically, if it's the case that Jesus Christ is God, and that is true, then Islam has to be false, and you have to proclaim that that is the case as a follower of Christ.
It's too bad the founding fathers didn't have that system in our country.
Well, the thing that's so funny is that you say that you're a progressive Catholic. You're worried about Christians in power. You say that Christians are out here. Oh, Andrew, Christians are out here. They should be looking at these other immigrants as religious refugees. That's what you said, your own words.
They're actually Christian refugees. At our border, they are Christian refugees that y'all have been socialized to call illegals.
Then how come you lobbied for Kamala Harris, raised money for the Harris campaigns, a Democrat operative, when she said that she wanted staunch border policies? She literally went to Guatemala and said, "You're not allowed to come. Do not come."
I know she did. I'm not a Democrat, my friend. I'm not a Democrat. Her policies cause less harm than Trump's.
You happen to be a Democrat operative.
Her policies cause less harm than Trump's, my friend. And her policies were closer to the actual teachings of Christ than Trump. Let me ask you.
Then that would be the exact same logic that we would have.
May I respectfully ask you one question? Can I ask you one question?
You're such a hypocrite, by the way.
Will you please? May I please ask you one question now that you've asked me so many? And now that you've called me names, dude, hit the other cheek. I can take it. Call me more names. I want to ask you something. Please tell me one actual gospel commandment or teaching of Christ.
Complete fraud.
Please tell me one actual gospel. Please tell us all and the viewers watching one actual gospel commandment or teaching of Christ that the MAGA movement fights for. Not what conservative Christians like. Something Christ, who is a mascot to this movement, actually commanded of us. Chapter and verse, if you can.
Sure.
Welcome the stranger. Individuals and nations take care of the poor. Stop executing people. Your movement.
Do you want me to answer? Or you can answer the question then.
Please do.
You want me to answer, or are you going to answer? So the truth of the matter is that if you're really as concerned with the poor as you claim, you would be all about the MAGA movement, who's trying to stop job-crushing immigration
of the poor
to the United States. I'm giving it to you. Calm down.
Christ commands us to welcome the stranger.
Calm down so I can answer your question, lunatic.
I mean, look at this. How can Andrew Wilson expect to actually talk to anyone about faith with an attitude like that? It's honestly embarrassing. You can't claim to be out here representing God while you're calling the guy a lunatic or a fraud just because you don't like his answer. That isn't defending Christianity. It's just a guy with a massive ego who happens to be wearing a cross. John asked a really direct question. Name one gospel commandment that the MAGA movement actually fights for. And what does Andrew do? He deflects. He goes on the attack. He starts name-calling. Like, that's your best shot? That's how you represent Christ? It's just hypocrisy dressed up as holiness. Jesus was pretty clear. Love your neighbor. Help the poor. Welcome the stranger. Those aren't really suggestions, right? But none of that mattered once Andrew got frustrated. He's so focused on dominance and being right that he's completely lost the actual message. When faith becomes a political brand instead of a moral compass, you're not an evangelist anymore. You're just a guy shouting on TV. It's a complete mess.
I'm going to answer it precisely. Here's how it works.
Names of this guy.
If it is the case that you make these bold claims like you do in your book, that Christians ought to be paying taxes for the poor so that we could, for the poor, we got to give it all to the poor. That's what your view is.
That's not my suggestion, bro. That's Jesus' suggestion.
Then it would be the case. Then it would be the case that you would not want these job-crushing waves of mass migration coming to the United States, which displace
one teaching of Jesus,
the poor.
Andrew. Just one.
They displace the poor.
Give me one teaching of Christ.
I just explained to you that
Give me
if
one
it's the
teaching
case,
of Christ you fight for.
I just did. I just explained to you, if you really want to uplift the poor, you don't do it with crushing mass migration.
What Jesus teaching did you explain?
I just explained to you that by your view of what Christians ought to be doing, we are doing it. Do you not understand this?
Christ says that individuals and nations will be judged. Christ says in Matthew 25 that individuals and nations will be judged, heaven or hell,
and
by how they care for the sick, care for the poor, welcome the stranger, and care for those in prison. MAGA legislates and votes against these commandments of Jesus.
And what was the Kamala Harris? What was the Kamala Harris Christian doctrine that you were for?
Kamala Harris is closer by light years to the teachings of Christ than the Republican Party, but I don't consider the Democrats to be. I'm not a Democrat. What are you on the treatment of immigrants, on anti-racism, on women's equality, on helping the poor, on making health care more accessible, on having less gun violence? I could do it all day, my friend.
All right, Isabel.
So, was that the epistle made it up? Jesus said, "Thou shalt not have guns."
Gentlemen, let the lady on the panel talk, please.
Man, this whole exchange is it's a mess. Andrew is actually sitting there trying to argue that keeping people out is the Christian way to help the poor. Like, seriously? You don't get to take welcome the stranger and twist it into lock the door for their own good. That isn't scripture, man. That's just a political talking point with a Bible verse slapped on top to make it look legitimate. It's transparent. And look at the pivot. John brings up Matthew 25, the literal blueprint for how nations are judged on caring for the sick and the poor. And Andrew just checks out. He doesn't even try to answer it. He just starts shouting about Kamala Harris. Like, wait, what? We're talking about the words of Jesus and you're bringing up a campaign trail? It's such a desperate dodge. Then he tries to end it with a joke about an epistle on gun control. Really? That's your big closer? It's patronizing. When you start mocking the conversation because you can't handle the actual theology being thrown at you, you've already lost. You just don't want to admit it yet.